Married men of Reddit, at what point did you know that you were going to marry the girl you were dating? After we started to get serious, she basically sat me down and told me about some mental health issues she had. She said she didn't want things to go further if I couldn't or didn't want to deal with it, and she wouldn't think less of me or be angry. She said watching her father go through shit with her mom solidified that she wouldn't have a relationship without her guy going into it eyes open because we both deserve that. I looked at her and knew I would marry her. Made me realize just how respectful and genuinely kind of a person she is. It's been a decade and she was hospitalized twice early on due to various issues. She told me after she was terrified I'd leave her. I was terrified for her. But no. It never even crossed my mind. About a month after we met, we were introduced at a TV station and we got to know each other pretty well during the first day we met because of the amount of travel we had to do for the filming of that particular show. I found out she was going to Europe a few days after that. While she was gone, I asked her mother if it was okay if I asked her out. When she got back, I asked her if I could take her out to dinner. Well, she said yes, and we had a 6-hour dinner and closed the place down and went out for a beer. The next day she had brought me some peanut butter cookies she had made. They were perfectly round. It may seem like an odd thing to remember or remark on, but they were quite literally perfectly round. All I could think of was that so much care went into making these cookies. I felt amazingly special. We dated for 2 months before I asked her to move in together. That was almost 18 years and 4 kids ago. She still makes the best and perfectly round peanut butter cookies on the planet. She called me 3 weeks after we'd started dating and told me she was in hospital because the doc had figured out why she'd been feeling tired so much. She had leukemia and was starting chemo the next day. She even asked if I wanted to stick around or run away. I stuck. 15 years married this year. Edit. Gold. You're lovely. My favorite uncle that I used to spend my summers with as a kid was diagnosed with aggressive late-stage cancer. Within 2 days of being hospitalized, he was no longer lucid and had only days left. My mother was with him. And a few days later a window opened up and he was coherent and able to speak. She called me so I could get to say goodbye. She couldn't get me as I was on a job site. So she called Paige, my girlfriend, trying to find me. Paige couldn't get me and asked if she could speak to Uncle Ron. She had never met him. Her only knowledge of him was the stories I had spent sobbing and telling her over the last few days. She spent 20 minutes on speakerphone with him recounting all the stories I had told her. She told him how much I loved him. How much I loved my time growing up with him. He didn't speak the whole time. After she hung up, she was able to get me. I called the VA hospital. I got on the phone with him. He told me, "You got one hell of a woman there." He was so right. Have you guys ever seen the movie Big Fish? Where he sees her and time stops. That's how I felt when I first saw her. I'll never forget, she was wearing this white and black dress and she looked absolutely stunning. I felt like lightning had struck me. There's a similar feeling I get when she falls asleep on my chest and I slowly stroke her hair. That's a feeling I wish I could bottle up and give to people whenever they're feeling down. I guess it comes down to the first moment I saw her and every moment after. Edit. Thanks for the Reddit gold and all the kind words. You are all wonderful. Lots of little but big stuff. I got through university because of her motivation. Ditto with my MSc. She queued in the freezing cold to get me an Xbox 360 at launch without me having any idea she did it. Seeing how much of an awesome mother she is to my stepdaughter. But it was something really small that sealed the deal on marriage. This is going to sound like the strangest thing, but here we go. She anthropomorphizes things. We had been BFGF for a few years and were living together at this point. When I was filling up the tea bags in our turn, she insisted that I move the old ones from the bottom and put them on top. Because she didn't want to hurt their feelings by not allowing them to fulfill their destiny to become our cups of tea. That was it. The fact that she won. Was that goofy and too could be that goofy around me meant I had to marry her. Together 10 years now. Married for 2. And she and our kids are my life. When I realized that every time I found something I liked, a movie, a TV series, a book, a song or whatever, the first thing I would think is that I couldn't wait to show her. It was like I couldn't fully enjoy something until I shared it with her. And pretty much 9 times out of 10 she loved all the same things. Still working on Monty Python though. As weird as it sounds. The first time I saw her, I told my friends and they didn't believe me. At the time I had a history of never dating beyond 2 weeks. After a month they believed me. We've been married almost 10 years now. My parents had something similar. They had just met through some crazy coincidence. And shared with each other, after being together for a long time, that at this one particular moment after meeting, they both had a weird thought that they'd get married. They both thought it was ridiculous since they were polar opposites. But they've been married for upwards of 30 years now. They've had their ups and downs. But sometimes you just know in your heart. I knew I wanted her in my life for as long as I lived when I was sleeping around at her place one night. She rolled over, wrapped her arm around my chest, and sleepily said, "Hey, I wish I could fly." Then fell back asleep. Sounds stupid but just kinda knew then. She was on a business trip to Chicago and I was driving 30 minutes to see some old friends. Alone by Heart came on the stereo and as I was singing along I realized how much I missed her and how much more fun the night would be had she been a part of it. Started looking at rings the next day and bam. 10 years later we are happily married with 2 adorable little girls. The more I found out about my then friend the more I was impressed. I found out through a friend of hers the enormous sacrifices she had to make to attend college. My wife is from Mexico near the border and she and I went to college on the US side. She worked a job on the Mexican side where she had to save every penny to pay the much more expensive tuition. Even though her family was extremely poor and would have benefited greatly from the extra money, her parents wouldn't allow her to help so she could follow her dream. Her transportation was a 1980s bike. Rusty chain and all. Rain or shine she rode the 45 minutes or so to school. When it rained she would carry an extra change of clothes in a plastic bag in her backpack and change in the bathroom at school. She couldn't afford books but did the best she could. Her first semester she didn't really understand English and struggled the whole semester but passed. The determination and dedication she demonstrated showed me the kind of person she is and the awesome partner she would be. She is the most selfless giving person I know and my best friend. When the P stick had a plus sign. Edit 1. Well, I knew. When I was going through some horrible trouble with PTSD and she never left my side. Trust me, I was awful, and although never physically abusive I was verbally abusive. Eventually I got my head on straight and the sun came out and we never looked back. We were already engaged when she had a positive pregnancy test so we moved it up. 7 years later and we may only argue 2 or 3 times a year. We started as friends with benefits. Somewhere in the next 2 months I went from popping over for a piece to babysitting her kids while she went to work. There came a point in the month or 2 that I was babysitting in the evening and waiting for her to get home that I realized I could not see myself living without her. I was suddenly part of a family and didn't want to ever not be with them. This year marks 20 years with that family and I don't regret a single moment. I walk her oldest child down the aisle in less than a month so she can start her married life and find myself even more in love with my wife and our kids every day. So when you realize you don't see yourself moving forward in life without that person, you better take that shit seriously. I knew her from high school, but we never dated. Fast forward 11 years. A divorce on my end. Smoking habit and a good bit of debt. She helped me overcome all of that. I remember one payday. I was stressing about a big surprise vet bill. She just casually offered to cover it and even took me out to dinner. The feeling that I had met someone that had my back when I was down was amazing. I love this wife of mine. About a few months in, I always read or was told that relationships are hard. You have to work at them. But with ours, It's not hard. We moved in together after less than 6 months. And moved countries for one another. We can spend time together without getting sick of each other. It all just fits. I think the fact that we hold very similar political, religious and general life values helps a lot. I was in the Navy and recently divorced. First wife cheated on me while I was at sea. And left with everything, except the debts. I got to keep those. But that's another story. My ship was in the yards in Philadelphia. And a buddy and I took a weekend and visited his girlfriend at her college. I met this girl there, who just happened to have graduated from the college the year before, and she was visiting buddy's girlfriend that same weekend. She lived in Virginia. I was stationed in Philadelphia. And every weekend I didn't have to work. Either I was traveling to see her, or she was traveling to see me. We met in January. I knew by March, just exchanging letters and seeing her on weekends, that I was in love and that everything I imagined about my life from that point forward, she was in every single scenario. I just knew. I proposed in July, right before my ship went around South America to change home ports to San Diego. She planned the wedding while I was away. And we were married in November. This the 26th of November will be 25 years. We have lived all over the country. And raised two terrific kids. One of is a Redditor and turned me onto Reddit. My husband was searching his mail for a friend's address and he came upon an email that made him smile. I asked him what it was and he showed me the email between them. About 2 weeks after we first met. In it my husband said, "I think I found the one." So for my husband it was sometime between when we first met and 2 weeks later. The morning after the first night we slept in the same bed together. It was a very simple thought. I want to wake up with her every day for the rest of my life. We are still relatively young. But we have been together 11 years. Married 5 this May. And have a couple awesome kids. She's sleeping next to me as I type this. And I still love the sound of her peaceful, sleepy breathing. When I started noticing she was better than every other girl I met. I read somewhere that after dating 30 or so women, there is only a 30% chance of meeting someone you like better no matter how many other women you date after that. The first time I cooked her dinner, I had to get up to get something in the kitchen. I come back 30 seconds later and my cat is running away with my chicken. Her joking response: "I was just trying to make friends. Hey, you getting good with my cat? You getting good with me?" Chicken is like crack to my cat. She stood no chance in stopping him. Physical science freshman year of high school. I walked into class the first day and saw the most beautiful girl I had ever seen. It's hard to explain the feeling other than to say I just knew. We started out as just friends. But by the end of senior year it just worked into a relationship. We've been together for over 7 years and married for 3. Our first baby will be here in a few months. Still in love as much as I was the first day of physical science. It was gradual. When I pictured my future she was always in it. When I tried to imagine a future without her, I couldn't. Been married over 25 years now. Honestly, during the first date, I was older at the time, 32, so I had enough experience to know what I liked and disliked in girls, so it was more like, wow, she is pretty enough. And if she is genuinely this fun and cool, she's it. We met through Match.com and our first date was 7 hours long. Edit was typing on my phone, so fixing typos. Also, wow, this hail corporate joke is ducking tired. When she said as soon as we're both graduated from college, we're getting married, I sort of had a hunch from that point on. More seriously, I knew from the beginning that we'd spend our lives together. Getting married wasn't on my fast track at the time. I'm glad I did it though. Spooning in bed, she nuzzled closer to me and farted. Full contact little spoon blast. She couldn't stop laughing at her own sense of humor for literally 20 minutes. I even left and came back and she was gently convulsing, giggling at her own fart. I knew she was the one. for me. I didn't suddenly realize I wanted to be with this girl. It feels like I've always known this girl and I've always wanted to be with her, and I'm just now suddenly realizing it. Like I just recovered from amnesia and I find out there's someone who already loves me. Edit. Turns out I only thought this because she kept everything wrong with the relationship to herself. Until about 5 months ago she decided to inform me of everything ever done wrong and also oh yes leaving. When I saw her naked and remembered she's way too smart and kind for me, it was like a trifecta. I had been with Kel for about a year when I had gone south for the week to attend BlizzCon. I had one night where I got amazing drunk with my buddies and woke up the next morning with the worst hangover of my life. I was sitting at breakfast with the guys and one of my good friends asked what I was going to do when I got home. Almost immediately I looked up and said I was going to get home. Serious up. And marry Kel. Right before he had asked me the question I was thinking about what direction my life should be taking. I thought about her and realized she was funny, smart, hardworking, kind. She loved children, had a good and loving family, and liked hash browns as much as me. She isn't perfect but 9 out of 10 ain't bad. And I never thought I would do better than 7. So I've never looked back and it's the smartest thing I've ever done. The moment before our first kiss, she thought I was having a heart attack. But I was just that damn excited because I knew this was much more than a first kiss. These stories sound like the interview parts from When Harry Met Sally. I dig it. I really hope one day I can have my own story. Things like this give me hope. We're engaged. But when we started sharing our deepest, most hidden secrets, I've been suicidal before and had a horrible home life growing up. Her mother is crazy, teaches children, has an autistic son and institutionalized her by telling her what to say to the doctor to prescribe her heavy antidepressants, which in turn messed with her head. Her mother drove her to cutting, which she recovered and got over. She was also abused as a child by her extended family and everyone flat out denies it in her family. She still has nightmares about what happened in the mental health facility she was put there when she wasn't crazy. Around a bunch of crazy people that were saying they weren't crazy too. I can't imagine what she went through. But it made me glad I was able to rescue her from her insane family and now we have an apartment. Due to get married soon and have 2 growing kitties. Dart. There was this girl dating a friend of a friend. I commented to my friend that she didn't get treated the way someone as nice and gorgeous as her should by her BF. I told him if I ever got the chance, I'd treat her like a princess. That was 12 years ago. And our first baby is due in 8 weeks. On our 5th wedding anniversary. I asked my grandpa this a few weeks ago. This is what he said. I might be paraphrasing as I translate. As a young man I loved to play the field. I had many girlfriends and some even overlapped. But one day I went to a friend's party and upon arrival he told I absolutely had to have a dance with one of the Isis sisters, as they were well known in town as the best dancers. So I approached the more beautiful of the 4 and she graciously granted me one dance. She was the best salsa dancer I had ever had the pleasure of dancing with. It was right then. 4 months before we started dating and 15 years before we actually wed. When I barely knew her that I wanted to marry her. They've been married for 64 years and they still kiss like teenagers when they're left alone. He's in better health at 90 than she is at 91, and he trails behind to help her walk anywhere we go. Even if he can keep pace with anyone else. His eyes light up when she walks into the room. It's the most successful and beautiful love story I know of.